Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where we talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Elementary. A great episode. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, we're picking up with last episode. Obviously, this whole, Wesley Conrad situation doesn't feel right, and it turns out to be just like I guess. It's, of course, Odin was behind it. Because Joan had looked into it. The sister was like, yeah, there was issues between Wesley and their parents, but it was like nothing ever that big enough to lead things like that. But Sherlock had eyes on Wesley. He didn't mean that just figuratively. He meant it literally because, both cases would be literal, but he had cameras set up in there. But the moment before things went down, the cameras went blue. It's the same thing that happened when Odin showed up at their place. He was hiding what really went down. Obviously, Odin didn't know he had surveillance there, but that in itself was kind of enough to be like, oh, that was his trademark to show that, yep, he was behind it. And it's like, he said all this emotion, so the question then becomes like, well, why did you do that? It's like, the only explanation could be the fact is, once again, he wants to prove to Sherlock and Watson, he wants to make them feel bad, make them question like whether what they did was the right thing. And it was. They found another way, but Odin still killed him because it was to prove his narrative, prove that because it went against proving that there's another way. No, the way I handle things is the best way, and that's border, I'm saying narcissistic because he feels like, almost like he treats himself like a god, I have to be the one and only one with the solution, no one else can be trusted, it's me and me alone, and it's just that's my take on it. So Sherlock and Watson are planning to take him down, and to do that, they call in the big guns. The only person they can rely on, of course, Moreland Holmes. I mean, obviously, with his connections and stuff like that, they can find a way around this situation. So they start looking. They set up a situation to make it okay, we need to draw in one of his assassins, and so they create this fake, alias to kind of draw in one of his assassins, and it turns out to be this school teacher named Annie Spellman. Well, apparently what ends up triggering her was basically she was at a school where a school shooting happened, and that's kind of where Odin kind of reached out to her, essentially. So basically, to break things down, there's a lot to kind of talk about. First and foremost, Watson was in her apartment, sees that there's these basically oven holders that she was buying from this particular website, and it turns out there's 3 of them. These particular, going on to buying a 4th one, but basically this is how she communicated with her handler about the hits, because it's like Patrick Mears, his thing was a video game, hers was this. I guess they have different outlets for every assassin. That way it's it doesn't all trail back to just if it all came from one place, it would be suspicious. So it'll probably have a multitude of different outlets they use to kind of contract these kills. And one of the particular murders, obviously it's a blue blood was on the gloves from the murder, and it turns out it's connected to this woman, Talia. Talia was basically, there was these particular crabs that their blood is used. It has a chemical reaction, and it's used in a lot of different stuff, apparently pacemakers and stuff like that. There was non-profit organization that was kind of trying to have her change the way she was operating, because these particular crabs she was using are near extinct, and they might be kind of leading issue with that. The whole point is, in terms of the whole thing of okay, so maybe that's why Odin got rid of her, because maybe her changing her mind about how they were approaching this whole thing would have meant a lot of people's lives would have been in danger, her completely stopping it. But it's no, they weren't asking her to stop it, they were just asking her to have a different approach. She'd still get the same result, but just use more a silicone, an alternative to this particular substance. There's artificial versions of it that could be used. So we end up finding out that Talia's brother runs a company. One of these said companies was run by Odin. Was being bought by Odin. It's one of the companies he owns. Talia's brother ran that company and owned it. Well, it turns out he wouldn't sell. After his sister's murder, he took a time away, and Odin swept in and talked to the board of people, because he was the biggest force of being no, I'm not going to sell this company. So it shows that how far he's willing to go, killing an innocent person just to, it's at first it's is he trying to make money? His explanation later on is basically saying that his justification is the thing that company is working on would be a tool for helping him could expand what he does, because basically it would allow them to look into videos, kind of recognize facial recognition, as well as kind of like know exactly where someone is. It also would allow them to read their expression. So it's like, oh, so you can read murder on people's mind. And he's like basically taking the information that they've already gathered about someone they're suspicious of, looking at this thing to be like, okay, they've got, like, they might have murderous intent, plus the information what we got, yeah, we got them, basically put him down type of situation. Because it turns out Odin was kind of back into a corner, because Moreland doing his thing, he ends up talking to a friend of his. Interesting enough, that actress, I feel like I've seen her popped up in a few things, but the thing that kind of comes to mind first is the sitcom Sullivan and Son. She played the mom, so I thought that was pretty dope. But essentially, because they're all about influence is their thing, just like Odin. And so basically it's like, oh, we have someone stepping in our realm of influence, Odin, so it's beneficial to take him out, because getting him removed from the board means more pool of influence for us to kind of pull in. And so literally half the world decides to go, yeah, we can't work with you anymore, Odin. Even someone connected him being like, yeah, we kind of have to fire you, because no other, like, half the countries in, like, half the world won't work with us, won't even like let our, like, engine into their world, like, like the search engine or whatever, unless we fire you. Which Odin's like, I'm part of the company. It's like, nuts, it's not your company anymore since we went public. And it's like, and that's what led to him confronting Sherlock, which was kind of an interesting confrontation. And you knew something, like, even though I could foreshadow it, because you could tell the way Odin was looking like he had something else planned, but we'll kind of circle back to that soon enough. It was actually kind of interesting talking, because it took, some convincing, because Annie didn't believe, like, oh, she had killed an innocent person. It's like, no, whatever they told you about Talia was complete and utter BS. She was an innocent person. There was nothing, and even the past month before she died, that would even suggest that she had anything ill intent planned. So you killed an innocent person just because it was a means to an end for Odin. For him, it's like, it's that whole thing of like one life against countless others. Like, why should I? It's like, it should matter, because that's always the grand, like, scaling. And that's the thing. It's like, who the hell are you to judge one life versus hundreds and thousands? No one told you to be in that position. No one put you in that position to be judge, jury, and executioner. But because he's so narcissistic, he feels like this is his mission, that he's on some holy mission that he has to accomplish. But that was the thing. Like, Sherlock was like, yeah, it was one life, but it was an innocent life, and it was just a means to an end to you. And like, the fact is, you don't even realize that, shows just how far off the deep end he's gone, not even to recognize that. It shows that, you're not just, like, the fact of the matter is, like, a lot of those situations could have been saved. Like, you don't know how many of those people were too far gone. Yeah, you might have stopped some stuff here and there, but like, you're not omnipotent. You don't know everything. Things don't have to go down a route. We could have stopped these people some other shape or form. But the fact of the matter is, it's like, you go about things the way you do because there's a lot of red tape involved, and like, other people would get in your way. And it's like, you don't want people getting in your way, because you want to feel powerful, literally having people's lives in your hand. Like, that's why I kind of feel like his whole like, oh, I'm some grand warrior fighting for justice. That's why it loses its valor in my eyes. It's just because I feel like it's almost, I don't know. His perception of right is so warped, and I mean, once again, you can understand where he's coming from. If you can stop some tragedy, that's why Annie was a part of it, because as someone who was involved in a tragedy, it's like, the fact of the matter is, like, she didn't want to feel powerless. Like, next time something bad happened, she wanted to be able to prepare herself and be able to help and stop it. And like, Odin presenting that to her, of course she jumped at the opportunity, like anyone would, just like Patrick Muir's did as well, And so, along with all that, Sherlock finally tells Gregson, which Gregson's obviously upset. It's like, yes, I'm not happy you didn't tell me, but for him, what really upsets him, he blames himself, because it's like, if I saw Patrick coming, none of this would have happened, because you wouldn't be in the position that you're in right now, because you and Joan had moved on, you were happy in London, and then me getting shot brought you back, and it led to you guys being mixed up in the middle of all of this, which, yes, there's a silver lining to it. Because of all that, they were able to make up, and this family, essentially Sherlock was able to kind of get his full family back to a certain extent. So there was a silver lining to it, but still, it's like this very dangerous guy. Like now he's in, like Sherlock and Watson are literally smack dab in the middle of this giant conspiracy, and now it turns into a situation of like Gregson's got his back. It's like we're going to bring up charges to Odin, but we need to do this through judges and a DA that can be trusted because he has wide influence. There's going to be plenty of people that are going to be swayed by him. I mean, he has a lot of pull all over the world, you know, so they have to be careful about this. Can't let him know that this is all happening because can't let him kind of strike, you know. So we'll see about, you know, where things kind of go from there. But then we have, you know, a sweet moment between Moreland and Sherlock being like, thank you. It's like, when I actually wrote you, I wasn't actually expecting you to come along. And it's like, of course, don't I always? Like, you know, I'm always there when you ask for my help, son. It's like, because even Odin was like, oh, I'm surprised, because don't you and your father have a very complicated relationship? Which they do, but over the course of the series, yes, it's been complicated. Very, very complicated, you know, especially because when, you know, especially even after everything in season 4, him taking over the Cabal and everything. But Sherlock, I think, has started to see a different side of his father over the course, the remaining course of the series. And then there's the whole situation of, you know, Moreland meets with his friend, but basically Odin still has the influence he does because he has access to a shit ton of information, and he basically used it to help her. So basically her bosses are like, yeah, kind of cut ties with Moreland because it's like the way of you guys getting information and influence, it's old school because the way Odin does things, it gets us a lot of information and fast. So basically putting him back in that ring of like, oh, you should turn to me, because basically he's someone that can sway countries. He could basically start wars or basically end wars with his influence and the knowledge that he has. Like, it's just that good of information that he's gathered. And obviously it's something only he has because, you know, he doesn't even want to patent it because he doesn't want other people to know that he has that technology. So there's that side of things. And sadly, when Sherlock comes back, you know, Belle is there waiting for him. And I'm like, don't tell me. And it's like, yeah, his dad's dead. And it's like, of course, like I knew it the moment. Like, the way things were being set up in the episode is like, of course Moreland was going to be removed from the situation, which obviously sucks. Like I said, Sherlock has a complicated relationship with his dad, but even this is hating him. It's like, yeah, he's always kind of hated his dad, but it's still one thing to lose your dad. Because let's not forget his brother's going too. Because I had to think about that before the recording. I was like, isn't his brother dead? Because I remember his brother was kind of in witness protection for a while, essentially. But then I remember it comes up storyline wise later on that he is dead, but I couldn't remember whether it was because he was sick. I feel like it might have been the case, or whether it was just that someone had finally caught up to him and killed him. Because at first Sherlock didn't want to believe it. It's like, oh, it's probably all a lie. But it turned out to be the case. I think, you know, there was so much contention between them, and Sherlock didn't reach out when he had the chance and never got an opportunity to kind of make amends with his brother fully. Like, they took steps in certain regards, but, you know, they literally hadn't seen each other since season 2's finale. That was the last time so it'd been a good couple years. And yes, he's been more in contact with his dad recently. Like I said, they were more open, but I think that makes it even hurt even more because it's like, yeah, like no matter how much of kind of it, because also it plays an interesting role because Moreland was in control of this cabal. The fact of the matter is, now that he's gone, what does that mean? I don't know if that's something they're probably not going to tackle this, but let's not forget Moriarty is back in the picture. We probably won't see her, obviously, but she is back in the picture. There were, like, her and Moreland were at war, and the whole point was like, eventually, you know, there was a stalemate that Sherlock set in motion last season, I believe. So, yeah, so that's probably taken out. So now there's going to be people pining for power over that cabal. You might even have Odin positioning himself to take over that. But it'd be pretty neat if Moriarty was like, finds out. It's like, he was behind that? Because let's not forget, like, she looks after Sherlock and Watson. Because let's not forget about the last person that came after Watson. Moriarty took care of that pretty quickly. So the question then becomes like, will we see her kind of take up position to like, go after Odin because obviously he's in her way, but also you hurt the person that I care about, because she still always has a special place in her heart for Sherlock and Watson, you know? So could that be something we see? Will we see Sherlock go full-blown revenge of like, no, I'm going to come after you, Odin. You won't have to worry about me destroying everything. Like, we might see even Sherlock cross that line to be like, I am going to kill you. Once again, there's also a another open storyline. There's once again, I brought it up before, that FBI agent that's against Sherlock. That might play a role in things going forward. Maybe he was the one who was like, oh, if you come after me, you threaten me or whatever, come near me again, I'm going to make it come out that, oh yeah, that Watson killed Michael even though she didn't. So there's going to be that whole thing. So I am very, very curious to see, what route this is all going to take. We are down to the last 2 episodes because I believe this was episode 11. So only 2 episodes left in this series. And I'm so curious to see how all this plays out, because now this means that like no one that Sherlock cares about is safe. Odin came after his dad does not mean like Odin, like Moreland had set it up that everyone that was important to Sherlock was looked after. But the fact is that Odin was still able to get to Moreland, no matter how well protected he was, speaks volumes. So the question then becomes, but then there's another part of me that's like, well, I'm saying all this, but what if Moreland's not actually dead? What if he faked his death to make it seem like Odin had won? Maybe it's something like that, but I think Odin actually got him. That might be something we see next episode where Sherlock has to like identify his body. Maybe he doesn't want to go. Maybe he does. I don't know. But we see what happens when it comes to people that Sherlock cares about are caught in the crosshairs or affected. Like how far he can and will go, Let's not forget like how he was at the beginning when he went after M because he thought, Irene was dead, or rather Moriarty. Obviously didn't know it at the time, but you get what I'm trying to say. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see where all this ends up taking us. I am very interested to see what the next episode has in store for us. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.